Hey, this is Nathan with the Home Service Leaders Podcast by More Leads Online. I'm here today with Chad German. Chad, I'm going to mess this up because you're involved in so many things. Your career is becoming prolific as far as I'm concerned. Tell us about your career. How did you get started as an electrician? What are all the things you do now? You're involved in a bunch of stuff.
Well, I became an electrician at the age of 29. I was working at the church out here in Utah, the LDS church, washing windows and doing some security stuff. And my son was born with a disability and I needed to get a career. So, ended up looking into the trade and got into it, and it was the best decision I've made besides marrying my wife, I guess.
Top two.
Yeah.
And
so,
what are you doing now?
So now I'm a master electrician here in Utah, which takes 8 years, 4 years in school, and then 5 different tests. And then I teach here at MTech. It's a technical college. I teach 4 nights a week, and I have a consulting business where I travel and teach. And we just started and launched a business called Nationwide Electrical Training Services. The owner or the president of IEC New York hit me up, and we've come up with that company together. So my business partner's in New York and I'm here in Utah. And so yeah, that's what I do. I run the service division also during the day for Gardner Electric. So I have a Gardner Electric for 40 hours a week. And then 4 nights a week I teach at MTech, and then I do seminars on Saturday and Sunday. And and then when I get a call to travel somewhere, I just drop it all and go out there and do some consulting.
And for 1 or 2 hours a week on Sunday night, you sleep. That's
yeah. No, I try to, that's one thing is when I'm home. I try to be present in that's kind of the thing is no matter where I'm at, I'm trying to be present in that. So if I'm teaching, everything else just gets put aside and I teach. And when I'm working for Gardner Electric, I try to focus on Gardner Electric and get that done. And when I'm consulting, I'm 100% consulting. When I'm with my family, turn off my phone, put it in my drawer, and board games and help them make dinner and doing laundry and dishes and stuff like that. So I try to just be present in everything I do.
Oh man, I think you hit me right in the heart on that one. Like, I definitely I feel that having so many things that you're doing and just right off the bat talking to you, I'm like, crap, I need to put my phone away.
Well, I have social media and it can be hard, right? So when I say that everybody has a little bit of time here or there to peek at their phone and
right,
check
yeah, do a little
see how many
scroll.
likes they've got and who made comments.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. You've mentioned this a couple of times being an electrical consultant. And so you have this business. Tell me more about what that means. Are you, because you're teaching and you're consulting, so I wouldn't assume that you're consulting exclusively for tradesmen, but maybe you are. Like, unpack that a little bit for me.
So my consulting is electrically based, obviously. Every state in the U.S. is a little bit different for requirements when it comes to licensing and continuing education. And for an example, Arizona, there's no real requirements to be an electrician. You just say you're an electrician and you go wire someone's house. To where here you have to get an apprenticeship license for 4 years, go through 4 years of school, pass the journeyman tests, and if you want to own your business, you have to wait another 4 years and take another few tests, and then you can own your own business to become after a master electrician. So
Wow.
The requirements here are way more dramatic than Arizona. New York, it really depends on from county to county. Some counties in New York, I know that Long Island has a lot of requirements similar to ours, to where Manhattan actually, it's kind of just one of those things where there's not a lot of requirements to be an electrician in Manhattan, which is kind of weird. So
as a consultant who's going place to place teaching about this stuff, and like you just said, I as a consumer myself, right? I live in a house. I need electrical work done. you just told me something that I didn't know, which was I have the potential of getting a much broader range of expertise than I guess I would have imagined because as a consumer, like I don't think about that. Like I don't know what all goes into it. And when I flip the switch, it works or it doesn't.
Yeah.
That's right. And so, but you're saying there could be a big, broad range. I wonder, and obviously don't name any names here, but I wonder if you've seen a little bit of, like there are certain places where you go in and you go, I see that the regulation for this has allowed the quality of the work to creep down a little bit.
I have traveled a lot with, like I said, as a consultant, but I also, when the economy fell back in 2008, I traveled doing, being the head electrician on Walmarts and Kohl's and Home Depots and hospitals. And so I've been all over the western part of the United States. And I'll be honest, I haven't noticed too much. I've noticed maybe like when I was in Tucson, Arizona, the electricians were just kind of happy with more of a labor status. No one was really trying to climb that ladder to where here, the electrical program, because it's looked at as a big career and the wages are high. The training that the guys come out of here with. I'm in a lab right now where, one of the tests in Utah, the hardest test is the practical test. You got to wire up motor control starters, transformers, 3-way, 4-way switches, conduit bending. You have to do that. And if you fail on one of those, you're done. So,
wow.
So it's one of those things out here where the status of a master electrician, I mean, I bet it's only not even 5% of guys end up getting there, even their journeyman license. It's just a really tough thing. But you get kind of hack electricians or, just do it yourself guys that don't really understand. They understand that a white is a neutral and the darker color is the hot conductor and the ground is the ground, but they don't understand what that means, right? And so it's one thing to just land wires on terminals and then leave, and another way to, I can walk up or I can troubleshoot a lot of times when people tell me problems on the phone. You're not going to find that from the handyman down the street or somebody that just installs electrical components. You find that from an electrician. So I think the training is more found in the skill set of the electrician and not necessarily the work. You can have work that looks immaculate with perfect staple jobs on your Romex, and you're like you said, all the consumer sees is the light turns on.
Right.
But an electrician that did the calculations to make sure everything was perfect is a lot different than just a handyman. And I'm not ripping on handymen, but
yeah. I've used a lot of, I think I've worked with a lot of handymen in my life, and they've, like my stuff works. And so I just for a second, because the very first thing you said was, no, I'm not necessarily, I've done a lot of traveling and I'm not necessarily seeing a slipping of the quality or of things working. And maybe that's more on the consumer side. And so some of it though might just speak to the industry, right? Like there's sort of a, do your job or like the community is going to rib you pretty hard. Right. And so we all want to do a good job. Then do you think that it's more on the community side that you're seeing that, and then the consumer sort of would never know anyway?
Yeah. I mean, if you're talking like social media, when you're saying the community side, I don't know if I'm following you correctly. So like the electrical community, there's a lot of misunderstandings about the electrical code. And one of the things I talk about in a lot of my classes is I give an analogy of a guy that goes to his wife and says, "Why do you cook the turkey in such a big pan?" And she says, "Oh, because it brings in the juices and it just cooks it perfectly." And then he's like, "That doesn't make any sense." And she goes, "Go ask my mom." So he goes to his mom or his mother-in-law and says, why do you cook the turkey in such a big pan? And she comes up with the same thing. And he goes, "Still not making any sense." And she goes, "Okay, go ask my mom. This is 3 generations. We're not wrong." So he goes to his wife's grandma and says, "Grandma, why do you cook the turkey in a big pan?" She said, "I had one pan." And so it's a long analogy to basically say like, a lot of times it's a lot easier to ask the guy that's 40 years into the trade than it is to crack the book and try to figure it out yourself. And there's
Right.
a lot of, it's worked this way for 30 years, so it's fine. But I'm telling you right now that the industry is really changing with the fact that the LEDs and the different things that we're coming up with. Back in the day, they would share neutrals with multiple circuits and not have a simultaneously disconnecting means on the breaker. Well, if you disconnect one of those circuits and you go to open up a neutral, you're going to fry every single one of those drivers in the LEDs. And so you go find a guy that has got 20 years experience and he hasn't tried to continually educate himself. He's going to learn that the hard way. And so that's my job, to come in and I teach the codes that give you allowance. The table 300.5 in the code book tells you to, the deepest you have to go to put pipes is 24 inches if you have to run pipes for electrical.
Mm-hmm.
But that's like if it's truck traffic and it's like on a parking lot or a driveway or on a highway, that's as deep as you have to go. It depends on the wiring method that you would use as well. And then if you're under a slab of concrete, like in a Home Depot or a Walmart or something of that nature, if you're underneath the concrete and there's no truck traffic, you can go 6 inches. But a lot of times the guys don't crack that book and they go get a Mini X and they're digging for 6 months to get all their pipes 24 inches deep. And if you do the math, you could lose hundreds of thousands of dollars on a big project.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Whew. So those are the things I teach a lot of.
That makes sense to me. Well, you just said this, that a lot of things are changing. So one of the questions that I knew that I wanted to ask you was like, it seems like you do a lot of work with like electrical devices and maybe equipment manufacturers. Am I accurate there? Mm-hmm. What do you think is the most, so as the industry is evolving a little bit, what do you think might surprise people that now the electrical industry is sort of connecting with this other industry? And that might be surprising for some people. Like I would have assumed all my life, right? Like it's really typical for electricians to work with general contractors. Like that's just a staple thing. And now are there new industries or new sort of like big people that you might be surprised that it's really common for electricians to work with now?
I mean, the electrical industry is humongous, and I tell that to my students when I'm teaching them like about capacitive reactance or inductive reactance. They're like, "We're wiring up a house. Why do I need to know this? There's no capacitor in a home, Mm-hmm. And I'm like, "You're getting a journeyman license that allows you to say you're qualified to be an electrician and wire up anything that comes your way, right?" So I've got friends that fly around the country and change out light heads on stadium, literally football stadiums and arenas, and that's a whole process in itself because of the voltage drop to get up to that pole. You have to know what you're doing just to change out a light head. You got street lights, everything that you can think of, the conveyor belt system that builds things, that's all part of electrical. And so as things get progress, we're just always wiring up. And like I say to all the students, and I hope I'm answering your question, it's just so open. I got asked to wire up a potato machine. And I was like, well, what's a potato machine? And literally they put potatoes on this machine and it goes up a conveyor system and the system rolls and cuts. It has big cutters and it cuts the ends off potatoes and shoots the potatoes into a big bucket. And then they go plant those potatoes. And it was, just for the electrical jobs, like $70,000 to wire this thing up with the controls and different stuff like that. So as long as people are being innovative and coming up with different ways to make things better, we're always going to be having to evolve in the things that we wire up, So
well, I think you answered the question in a stellar fashion. Like, first of all, I would not. I think a lot about the home service industry, so I'm thinking pretty often about what it means to be an electrician as far as a home goes. So I'm thinking construction or renovation or, like new cool stuff. And then you and I were chatting just before we started recording and you mentioned a hot tub. And I don't know why, but it just like slipped right out of my brain that of course would be a job for an electrician, right? And so I'm like, the amount of other things or like, oh, well, there's this potato cutter, like to prep for planting. Like this is an electrician's job. And so that idea, the industry is so broad. You basically just said, look, if something is moving or there's light, we were there.
Right.
So that, I mean, the industry is gigantic. It's the whole world over.
Yeah, it's going to continue to do that. So, it can be frustrating when you get a fourth year student that has just been wiring up houses for 4 years, who doesn't, he's in a class thinking he's learning way more than he needs to know, but he doesn't see the potential of where he could go with his career.
Right.
The thing is we're all going to change. 15 years from now, I'm not going to be the same person I was 15 years ago, that I am right now. Whether I try to make that happen or not, it's not going to happen. And so we can evolve and grow with that, or we can just fall backwards. And I think some of these guys I see on Instagram all the time, I've been doing this for 30 years. Well, doing it for 30 years, doing it the way you did 30 years ago is wrong now. And there's no 2 cents about it. It's wrong. We don't wire things up. We got home automation systems. A lot of times for the lights, we're pulling little teeny low volt wires, and we're taking an Ethernet cable up to a box, and they can control everything from their phone in office buildings and homes now. So it's, I walked into a basement. I did a basement, and a guy said to his son, "Hey, play the Alexa app, play your favorite song." And all of a sudden, one of the Disney songs came on, and the lights in the room just all changed and started going to the beat of the music. And the little boy was dancing, and I was like, "How did I wire that way?" Like all I did was wire like normal, but those cans and the internet and everything that we've got nowadays opens up so many different avenues for us.
Well, I was going to ask you, for someone first starting out, and so you just started touching on this question anyway. So what would you say is the most important thing for building a career as an electrician? Not just to go wire up houses. And I want to ask you about that in a minute, because again, we focus a lot about the home service industries and doing that type of work. But for someone just starting out, what do you think the most important thing for them for building a career as an electrician is going to be?
I get asked this question all the time, actually, on my social medias, from guys that are deciding if they want to be an electrician, or they're just getting in the trade and they want to know what they can be doing better. And there's so much to learn. I mean, I'm still learning. I learn every single day. Like my son, who's 19, put a kick in a pipe somewhere where I wouldn't have normally done it, and it looked way better than I've ever made my pipe work looks good, but I was like, son, I wouldn't have to do all the bends I did if I would have just did what you did. Like, where did you come up with that? And he's like, I don't know. But he's been helping me since he's 9 years old, and it's just kind of natural to him. But I think the number one thing is you really have to find the love of the trade. Mm-hmm. And I know, I was up today with the owner of my company, Brandon Gardner. He was my original foreman for another electrical firm when I first started in the trade. He was a new journeyman, and I was older than him, but he was a journeyman, and I was this old, I was 29 and he was 25. But so the love of the trade that he had, he just loved being an electrician. And still to this day, he doesn't want to go sit in the office. He wants to wire things up, and being with him today and troubleshooting this. And we're talking about the capacitor on top of the motor. And we blew the technician from the hot tub place away. He was just like, well, so this is a capacitor. How does this work? And we're explaining to him. He's like, dude, other electricians just take wires, land them, and then they leave. And I was like, well, we're both master electricians, and we both love this stuff. So I think you're going to have hard days. I remember literally, this is going to be out there for everybody to hear, but I remember being in Tucson, Arizona, away from my wife and kids, and just out there forever. And I was just really struggling, and I couldn't sleep at night because it's too hot, and I just lost it. I had gotten an argument with one of the coworker, and I walked out to the Porta-John, closed the Porta-John door, and I just sat there and I cried. I just cried so hard, and I was like, I just want to go home. I want to be with my family. This isn't fair, and just, then I manned up and wiped the tears off. No one saw. I walked out and picked myself up and went at it. And that just made me stronger and better. So I just think that if you have the love of the trade, you'll get through those times. A lot of guys I see just like, oh, this isn't meant for me. And literally it is what it is. We have to be sometimes I have a friend that just did an install. He had to go in when the tide of the ocean was out. He could go in and do his electrical work. And then when the tide was coming, he was done. And so he could only go so much a day because it was underneath a big dock area. Right. And then I've had guys working, mines, coal mines, and on top of skyscrapers. And, these we're having to put electrical in places that you don't really think of because you, like you said, you flip a light on and it's there. So if you love the trade, you'll be able to just take off. So.
Well, where you literally teach this all the time, and you mentioned this earlier, right? Like if someone was doing exactly the same thing, so you have a passion for the trade, you love the trade, that's going to be the most important thing. If you've been doing it for 30 years and you're someone, even if you're someone who loves it, if you haven't continued educating yourself on all the new, it sounds like what you're saying is it's more than just loving the thing that you're doing right now. It's loving the concepts of it, even as they grow. And so like, that would be my other question is, it sounds like you're saying the electrical industry is changing a lot. And so how will that affect like the day-to-day of what someone is doing right now? Like, yeah, they should be really in love with what they're doing. How would you encourage someone to sort of go, hey, look, this is changing a lot though. So one of the other things you're going to have to love is this.
Yeah. That's a really good question. I think it goes back to my friends, and I've teased these guys enough that if they listen to this podcast, they'll know who I'm talking about. But I've been doing it this way for 30 years, and I'm not going to change. That guy, he has to understand. When I went through electrical school, I struggled for a little bit to understand things. In fact, that's probably why I love teaching so much, and I probably relate with those students that don't understand it, because I can see when they're like, I call it the oh shit face. They're just like, oh shit, and everybody in the room's looking around, and I can say, okay, I'm going to stop. And I go back and I say, okay, all that's going into your brain is oh shit. So you're not going to understand what I'm going to say. So everybody get up, get the oh shits out, sit back down. Now let's talk about this. And then I go back step by step. I think that the big difference is these guys have other avenues, if a lot of times in the electrical industry, we have teachers that are just electricians like myself, and I only know what I've been taught and what I've dealt with. And I do a lot of, I told the president of the school here, the president of the apprenticeship program here at MTech, I said, look, I said, I study harder than every student in the school. And he goes, I know. And I do, because I want so much information that these guys are getting the best experience in the school, because I didn't have that. Mm-hmm. And, but what these guys have is, here's a cell phone. And if I want to look up, capacitive circuitry or, combination circuits or series or parallel circuits, there's electrical engineers that are making videos that are way more in depth than, the electrical teacher inside the school. And so I think the students now, if they're looking and their teacher doesn't care, they could easily just go home, flip it open, and watch video. I've had a first-year student that came in and knew everything in first year already. He was like, I watched a YouTube video, and are you talking about this? And I'm like, yeah, I'm talking about that. He was saying stuff before I was even getting to it. So I was really impressed with the fact that he was educating himself. And so that's kind of, I think, what we're going to have to do as things happen. We were trying to figure out the hot tub today, and we both pulled out our phones and started Googling stuff. And you couldn't do that 15, 20 years ago. Right.
So almost just like it is a passion for the craft itself, but there's just a reality to being like, hey, you're a self-educator now too.
Right. I mean, just look at the podcast in itself. 20 years ago, there was nothing out there where tradespeople could go to listen. We just turn on, what was that show I used to always watch? Married with Children. You go home, you watch Married with Children, just hang out, watch Al Bundy, and then you go back to work and you do the same thing. Now it's like your entertainment can be what you love and can be your work can be enjoyable. You can be a workaholic and not be at work. You can just be on your phone, hanging out with your family, scrolling through the internet. So I'm glad I can be part of that, that's why I do these podcasts and stuff like that, so that I can help help build the love of the trade for sure.
Well, I appreciate it. I am also all in on this. So, thanks for helping.
Yeah.
Plus, you're way smarter about all of this stuff than I am. So I'm just piggybacking off of how brilliant you are. And so that's super convenient for me. What I wanted to ask you this too, then we've talked a lot about like, here's what's going on if you're new. Here's what sort of the old school that we want to almost kick out a little bit and go, hey, we need to evolve. And so then my question is, what about leadership in the industry? And so like both as someone coming in and as someone been around for a while, that's clearly a place where there could be tension.
Oh, yes.
And so what would you say about leadership in the industry right now on both sides?
I think that this industry is lacking in leadership tremendously. I think that if anybody was, and I hope I don't sell myself out on this, but I think that if there was anything that if you wanted to make a lot of money and you had leadership material already, and you hit the construction industry, you would make a big splash. Because you think about it, when I became a journeyman, I've been trained how to wire things up and read the code book. And all of a sudden they hand me a job that's a $900,000 project. What other industry is going to hand? They're not going to hand over an attorney a case at $900,000 and not help him. It was like, here's your plans. Go to town. Don't lose us any money. We want 20% profit, right? Yep. And my first thing was like, okay, well, I'm just going to stay late. I'm going to work as harder than everybody else. And I compare it to in baseball, when you get a guy that can hit an infield home run, that's awesome. Right. But he's working a lot harder to hit that infield home run than a guy that can hit the ball out of the park. So for years, I still have a reputation and get job offers from old companies to come back because they know Chad German, if he goes to work on Monday, will stay on the job until Friday, go home and shower, come back Monday. But my family was hurting, I was hurting. And at the end of the day, they slap you on the back and say, good job, let's move you on to the next one. It becomes expected. And eventually I realized I'm really bad at organization. I'm just yelling at people, making them slow because they hate me now and the morale is down. And so true leadership skills has taken time for me to overcome. And so I've been hired before to be the bad cop, and I thought everybody liked me. And I walked out and when I quit and looked back and, there was birdie fingers when I was like, oh, I thought they were all my friends. And that was pretty mean. Right. That's how companies sometimes are. But really to be a real leader, you have to get people to buy into you. You have to get people to buy into you to be able to kind of chase your dream or chase the goals. Right. Mm-hmm. So I guess my question to you is, how would you get people to buy into you? What would you do to get people to buy into you? You got me on the podcast somehow.
Yeah. Well, right. How did I get Chad German on this podcast? I think the thing that I have that attracts people to me, well, let me say this two ways. It works both ways. The thing that I have that either attracts people to me or that allows me to sort of face the fear of it, frankly, is just an insatiable curiosity.
Right.
Like when it comes to this stuff, I'm like, look, my ego over there, I don't know, whatever it takes, you tell me.
Right.
The end.
And I felt that from you. I think that's something that, you have a strong point, but I'm going to tell you, one of the reasons I would probably say yes to a podcast, but I was super excited about this one. You and I talked on the phone about a week or two ago, and I've been just super amped up and wanted this to go really, really well. And I would say that's because you bought into me, right? So you bought into me, which made me buy into you, and ultimately, hopefully, the overall customer or person that's listening to this buys into what we have to offer. I think that when we have leadership, when you take an apprentice aside and you teach him things and you buy into him or her as a person, they're going to buy into you because they know you care. And I think when I was teaching that to one of our foremen, it hit me. I was like, I need to get my wife to buy into me. I'm complaining that she's mad at me. I'm complaining that she's never happy, but I'm never home. And so when I'm home, I'm buying into her. I call her every day now and check on her instead of just, my wife's independent. She's tough. She doesn't need to. That woman doesn't care what I'm doing, and ultimately she did. but she was just learning to cope, right? So
Right.
I would call my wife and check on her when I'm home. I'm doing the dishes and I'm listening, and we're not perfect. I'm not perfect at that, and not any leader is perfect. But if you can get people to buy into you, usually it's because you've bought into them, and it gives you so much
Mm.
power in chasing deadlines and doing stuff like that.
Do you think that plays a lot? I use the term discipleship and mentorship a lot. I think about those terms a lot. And I sort of hunt mentorship. I try to make myself a mentor of as many people as I can, right? Like, it's one of the reasons I love doing the podcast. I get to talk to people like you who are like, you've honed your craft so much. And I'm like, whatever you've got to give, like, I'll take it. I'll do whatever it takes. And do you think that you would use those terms instead of just maybe the term leadership, that you would say, yeah, that term discipleship or mentorship, like, that's something that you should be thinking about developing?
Oh, absolutely. I think that I actually have an individual in the industry who he uses mentorship, the phrase, a lot, but he has a really hard time getting people to buy into him. I was super excited when he reached out to me, and we were starting to work together, and then it became frustrating because it was more about him than it was about anything else. And I think people can see beyond that. So with that being said, I think you have to be genuine, and we're all human. We're going to have rough days, but I think that's a perfect phrase: discipleship, or being a mentor for somebody. And that's why I love teaching so much. You know what I mean? I struggle. I really love the student that maybe might not be getting it, but he's calling me with questions. He's texting me, he's staying after early. And I tell you, those guys are the leaders. Those guys are the ones, because they'll have a teacher like myself, they have bought into them, that they're going to want to buy into the guy that when they see that as well. But it's the guys that, sleep in class and wake up and get 100% on the test, go to work, they don't last very long. And so I really think it's important to focus on those individuals that will do whatever it takes to succeed. And I think it takes a whole bunch of people in line to make that happen.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a good word. If nobody else takes anything from that, I think we could probably just clip that chunk out and go, here you go. This is the most useful thing. But I do want to talk to you about, so now that we've got that cemented, okay, we've talked about the best thing we can possibly talk about. Now let's chat about business stuff a little bit, if you don't mind,
Okay.
Which is, you've run or help run several businesses. And so people in business circles, and I spend a decent amount of time on LinkedIn and stuff, and I see these people equating business and leadership concepts all the time. And so then I want to twist that on its head just a little bit and say, how much do you think business acumen and experience in the trades sort of naturally fit together?
I think they fit together great, because in the trade, whether you're a subcontractor or a contractor, you're having to deal with people. And from the minute, my son right now, 19 years old, and he's been helping me since he was young, and so I remember Abby, she's one of our apprentices here. She said, I love Quinn, but I hate him. And I said, well, what is that supposed to mean? She's like, Quinny will see me doing something wrong, and he'll walk by and just kind of keep working. And then you come by and you start chewing me out that I'm doing it wrong. And she's like, why didn't you tell me, Quinn? He's like, well, you're an adult, and I just didn't want to overstep my bounds. And as much as I want my son to step out of his shell, he's learned that by being in the trades and seeing me get after the guys and like, let's go. And then when the superintendent or the customer comes in, kind of flipping that over and being like, hey, we're chasing this deadline as fast as we can. We apologize. You're your best self when your back's up against the wall, or you show your true colors, I should say. You're not always your best self.
Yeah.
Your back's up against the wall. And, this hot tub situation, the text I got last night was not, at the end of his text was, this is not acceptable. And his hot tub had been tripping so many times. We've changed breaker after breaker. Everything there makes sense. We have 240 volts. It's pulling 40 amps on a 50 amp breaker. It's not going to trip. The hot tub people were saying we gutted it out, put a new in. And am I frustrated that I have to go an hour away? That's 2 hours a day just to get there. for, this has cost us, 4 times of what we've charged the guy to get it in. And, but at the end of the day, how you treat that customer is ultimately a business transaction, whether you're the lowest guy in the field, in the construction. I don't mean to keep going, but in the construction world where we're using our hands, and I tell this to our guys all the time, we are the product, right? So yesterday, Abby was there working, a cute young lady in with somebody's house working. The lady came in, the owner goes, "Oh, girl electrician, she's the best." And she is, like, she's outworking all the guys, and we're trying to keep up, and we're just like, Abby sets a different product out there than what we do. Whether she's female or not, the product that customer sees is she stands out because she's female and she's focused. I've worked with other female electricians, and not all of them were like Abby. Abby's Abby because she's Abby, but we are our product. So how we talk to customers, how we deal with problems, how we bid, that is 100% what the customer gets. It's like if you buy a shirt and you go put it on and the sleeve falls off, you're not going to buy that brand again. It's the same thing when you deal with Chad German out in the field.
What would you say are some of the most important unexpected lessons you've learned while starting and running your businesses?
It's funny because being in big companies, with being in big electrical firms that they have hundreds of guys, it comes across a lot of times like guys will leave you'll train them up and they'll leave you for 50 cents more, right? And I kind of believe that on certain things, but I'm amazed with this company. If we get a guy that's just not willing to work hard and have an integrity and be friends and work with everybody, they generally just leave. We've never really we've had like 3 or 4 guys that just, and I'm not saying anybody that has left our company, that everybody that's left is a bad apple, right? We've had good guys leave for good jobs and stuff like that, but we don't seem to keep bad people around because how we treat them, and we buy into our guys 100%. So I think that's been the surprising thing, that it's not always about money for people.
Oh man, I have learned that lesson both painfully and not, but definitely the first time or two you learn that lesson, it's painful, right? Like on either side. Well, and because this, whether it's something that you've done in your life or something you've just watched someone do, but if you'll leave for 50 cents more, and I made this mistake once in my life. If you leave for 50 cents more, what you discover is the person who was willing to poach you for 50 cents more is willing to replace you for 50 cents less, the next day.
Yeah. And
so it's not, the relationship you're entering there is not, there's nothing permanent about that, right? It's very transactional and it stays that way. You're not going to build anything relationally, and ultimately that's long-term. That's a career. That's like what you said, that's what you're actually showing to people and customers. And so if you're making those sort of transactional decisions, you're not building anything over time. And maybe I'm sort of stepping out of the bounds of what you were saying, but I think
you're right on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, like something I've learned the unfortunate way.
No, I think it's good. That's right on.
Cool. Well, when it's also says something to business owners too, right? Like, hey, business owner, if your strategy is to go pay a guy 50 cents more, or $1 more, you're probably going to attract, right, from the low end.
There's guys that I have a lot of friends that they chase the dollar, but they won't come and get into school. So a guy will show up and go, "I got 8 years experience. School, I've got in and out, but I get so busy." In reality, they're not interested. They want that money, right? But the problem with those guys is they get to the point where they're not worth what they think they're worth, and then when those big jobs end, or like you said, they're going to keep a qualified guy with the paper, with the license in his pocket over you. And so you're doing yourself an injustice if you don't go through the program and do it the right way. And a skilled tradesperson is worth a lot more than somebody that's not. It is what it is.
And then you're never going to be the guy. You're not going to, as the business owner, that person's not going to weather the storm with you, and vice versa, right? Not just as the electrician who's taking the $1 an hour more. Like if that business owner has a rough time last year, on both sides, again, it's like transactional. And so if your tactic is to just go hire someone for $1 more, first of all, that guy's going to leave for 50 cents more than what you bought him for. And so you're going to lose him, but he's also not going to weather the storm with you. So if you go through a rough patch or you're light on jobs for a week or a month or whatever, like they're already out looking, like they're on to their next thing. And so that guy's not going to hang with you at low pay for a few weeks and take some relax on the couch and then be like, it's cool, we'll pick back up, like I'm loyal to my crew. That's not going to happen.
Right. I had a conversation with the plumber, and he said, you realize as a business owner, we're training guys. You're training guys to basically take your cut. Like you're training the next business owner. A lot of guys won't stay. And I thought, well, that's an interesting take. And I looked at his company and thought, I can see why you do that. There's no opportunity. Right. And so people are going to work for you because you buy into them and they know that there's a future and for opportunity. No one wants to stay in the same spot 15 years and feel like they're falling backwards. And if they are, they're the guys you generally don't want. You want those guys that are hungry. And, one of the biggest problems I have is I'm always trying to climb the ladder. And it's like, where's the top of the ladder? I don't know. It's fun to climb a ladder. So you got other guys that will stay in the pit and look at the ladder and be like, look at that guy working hard. We'll just stay down here. So I think that it's a mentality thing a lot of times, and different companies are going to, like you said, they're going to attract those type of people.
Well, I want to ask you this to sort of cap off this. And then I do want to ask you a couple of questions about marketing because I can't help it. Okay. And so like, obviously you're steeped in manuals all the time. You're studying all the time. You're growing. You've talked about this. So then do you have sort of like a top 3 books you'd recommend to someone running a business, maybe especially like a home service company or someone in those type?
Right now, the books I'm reading are all very technical. It's not much business. So I've read a lot of leadership books. There's one about General Powell, who used to be one of our generals in the military, in the Army. And that book was phenomenal. Talked about different types of leadership things that I take on myself. And then business-wise, I'm not the owner of the business I work for during the day. So I read business books. Mike Holt has a business book, Mike Holt Enterprises, that's specifically about electrical estimating and stuff like that. So I've read those ones. They're pretty good. But that's something I should probably do more of, is read business books.
As you're moving to sort of grow your own, you're like, oh man, I can't just be, I'm a master electrician. I've got this part on rails, right? I've got my education continuing, and now you're looking at a whole new branch of education and like, all right, time to go again.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, my biggest fear is that I lose it all, right? Somehow I lose everything that I've worked hard in my mind for. But at the same time, I think that as long as you're continually in books and bettering yourself, that, then you're just going to be above your competition. That's the hard part, is, being somebody right next to the owner of a decent sized electrical company. Mm-hmm. I know that Brandon just wants to be out in the field. He got to where he was at by being an electrician, and now he's got a bid. He's got to go help me with a hot tub. He's got to, he just got there by being a really good electrician. So, with the skilled trades thing, I love that Brandon will just let things go sometimes. Like, I want to control everything, but I'm bringing Dan in to run that office stuff because I can't sit at a desk for 8 hours a day, right? And so Dan loves that. Dan's idea of success was to sit at a desk all day. Yeah. And so he's made it there. He's made it out of the field and sitting at the desk, and he's doing his thing. And And then, we're talking about bringing in other project managers and things of that nature so that we can keep things flowing. And again, it just brings opportunity for everybody to progress. As long as everybody's on that same channel, it'll work. You got to kind of talk to your guys or not talk to your guys into, you can show your guys and convince them that if they put in what they're supposed to put in, then, and you put in what you're supposed to put in, the future is going to be brighter. And that seems to be working for us and for other companies. There's other companies out there, that guys that I associate with on Instagram, that they've been doing it for 30 to 50 years or whatever, and they have 4 guys, and because they want to be out in the field as an electrician, and they want to be kind of more in control of what happens, and then they want to hit the books, and that's fine. That's the cool part about being a tradesperson. You can be self-employed, or you can be an entrepreneur and own a large company. So I think that's another awesome thing about being in the trades.
Oh, for sure. Well, you just touched on this, and I said I wanted to go into marketing. It's kind of my last question or two, but you have focused so much on leadership. It feels like you've got 2/3 of business already sort of like figured out. You also just talked about like you're watching the guy that you're working with every day, the owner, doing what most people who are studying business would say is the hardest thing, which is really letting go of the vine on, like, oh, this guy loves doing this stuff. And I'm going to let go of the vine. I'm not, I'm going to trust him. He loves doing that anyway. So great. That lets both people get to do the thing they're happy about. And it also makes sure the job gets done really well. So then the organization as a whole can grow. And then I have this question for you, because like you're saying that this isn't necessarily the thing you've studied, but like we connected on Instagram, like you have 20 something thousand followers. Like that's I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, obviously, ever, but like I've seen a lot of home service companies in my last several years, decade in the marketing industry. And I'm like, that's a lot of people. Like, tell me about how does the availability of social media, it seems like you're not focused on business stuff, but on the flip side of that, like you've grown this incredible following. Like, how does the availability of social media change the way you think about growing and marketing your business?
I mean, I wouldn't be where I am as far as talking to you and the consulting. And I mean, teaching wise, I'd probably be here, but I know that my classes fill up within a half hour of registration, which is unreal. And it's because of this. We were just in the parts store today, and a guy was looking over at me, and my boss was like, that guy follows your page, and he's like, hey, Chad, you remember we talked? And I'm like, who are you? And he's like, oh, German. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I remember you. And so that stuff's been happening. My boss lives an hour and a half north of me, and he was in a Sam's Club, and he could hear my voice. He said he was in line at Sam's Club, and he looked over, and the guy ahead of him had my account out and was listening to my stories. I can only attribute that to the fact that I love the trade, and I've just been myself. I mean, when it comes to Instagram, anybody can buy followers, right? And anybody can, I see accounts where guys have 40,000, and you look at their stuff, and it's obvious that they don't get any comments on their stuff, and there's no interaction, and they're doing goofy things, and it's like, this isn't even a real page. And that doesn't really matter, but mine is organic, and it's taken a few years to get to that point. But I think that it's obviously helped for me to put myself out there and put me in the top of the industry as far as, people know who I am. I'm at a different level with the code stuff. There's people that have been code leaders for a long time for the electrical code and knowledge. And I've been teaching at the trade school for 5 years now, and just kind of cracking away, not looking at myself that way. But then I'm putting myself out there, and it's really, I got so busy with teaching continuing education classes in Utah that I don't know what to do when it comes back this next year, because it's an every other year thing. So it's been amazing. And I think you just have to be yourself, and you have to, pay attention to what everybody else is doing, and maybe make a few allies along your way. Like, the connection here, obviously I'll post this on my stuff, and then it'll bring some attention your way. And that's kind of how it works. Right. And so marketing for myself, my thing is just sometimes you're always going to get those people that are rude. You got skinny nostrils, or, you're bald. People are going to take little shots at you all the time. And, my big funny thing is that when I run into electricians, and I do it all the time, they always have a huge smile on their face. And I say, I'm taller than you think, right? And then they just say, how do you know what I was thinking? Because I'm 5'7", and I think that they think I'm going to be like 6 foot or something. But I always know what they're gonna say. I went to New York with my son, and a few guys in New York were like, hey, let's meet up and go to lunch. And one guy, I thought he was going to be short, and he thought I was going to be tall, and he was like 6'4", and I was 5'7". So it was a really funny moment. But just be yourself and collab with people. And I think that social media just takes off. If you're going out there arrogantly, and especially in an industry, if you're trying to be strong in an industry and you go out trying to act like something you're not, most guys in the blue collar end of the field will eat you alive. I just think that that's just how we are on the job sites. That's how we are in our personal life. Guys go to the bar and they get in fights, and then they go to work the next day. You run into those guys when I work up in Wyoming. But that's how trades guys generally are. So if you go at it just being a trades guy, like we talked about before the podcast, just be yourself. And I think people buy into that. You won't get everybody to love you. That's just how it is. But you definitely can make yourself go out there a lot farther than if you sit on your couch.
All right. You heard him. Chad German says, be authentic and use social media to be social.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. This might feel like an obvious question, but do you feel like being on social media, I run the gamut, right? So we're More Leads Online. We're a local SEO agency. And first of all, if you want to get into an industry where you sign up to just like get shat on just for being in an industry, like be a roofer or be an SEO. What do you do? Oh, you're a scumbag. I see.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
I think that's all blue collar. Oh, construction worker. Right.
Right. Like, yeah. So you're going to rip me off.
Exactly.
Right. Like, so we get into these conversations all the time where we're like, how do you, in our little micro communities, right, where we're being social on social media, or on this conversation right now, we're like, okay, you're cool. We enjoy this conversation. Oh, you're authentic. Like, okay, it's cool within our universes where we can be this way, where we really do have this opportunity to be authentic. How have you seen the time you've spent on social media impact anything for your business or for your boss's business? Because that's the question I have to answer all the time, right? Is like, yeah, you hawk SEO, you hawk local SEO, but like, what does that really do for me? I've already been burned 4 times by this. What's the point of investing in it? And I'm like, shit, it really does work. I can't solve all the sins. How do I have this genuine conversation? And so my question to you would be like, have you actually seen this have some sort of business effect?
Oh, absolutely. So, it's created a lot of opportunities. I've got industry, I'm friends with the high end guys at Southwire Tools, it's a huge $16 billion company. They flew us out there. We've got some tools from them that put in our trucks that are, nice tools that we tell our guys to take care of. I got my website done by a guy from Racketeer Tools. He's just wanted to help me out, and he started chadgerman.com for me and did a great job. And I tried to pay him, and he wouldn't. So it's just the industry. Literally, the thing I've been amazed by is like people really want to help other people out, right? Like, and there is that dog eat dog type of thing because everybody gets jealous of success, but at the same time, there's good, genuine people out there that are just amazing, willing to help you. One of the coolest things is a guy named Derek that works for us. He'd hit me up a few times with electrical questions on Instagram, and we've built a relationship where he'd ask questions, I'd tell him, and one day Brendan goes, we just need a guy that's not quite been trained to the point where he's not going to listen. because he's got 50 years experience, and we don't want a second year apprentice that we have to, he's like, I just need that really good right in the middle guy. And I said, I wonder if Derek's really happy. And so I literally DM'd Derek, and he said, he was like, that's funny. I just decided about an hour ago that I was going to look for another job. So he had came, and I remember I gave him my company truck because it was just all on the whim. So my wife and I drove up and dropped off my company truck at his house so that he could have a truck. And then I used my we had another car in the business. I used that for a little bit until we could get another truck. But when I went up there, he was almost starstruck because he'd been following me and different things, but we're great friends. And I will tell you, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings in the company and make anybody feel like I don't like them, because I love everybody. But Derek has been an absolute pleasure to work with, and he is one of the most skilled electricians I have ever met. When it comes down to skill, he is one of the most skilled individuals that I've ever met, and I've worked with a lot of electricians over the years. So it has changed our company dramatically. We have guys all the time hitting us up for work, and guys that want to work with me, and it's kind of cool. It'd be hard to leave the company when you pretty much handpicked all your coworkers. That's what I tell my boss. So I've been offered jobs from other good companies before, but I couldn't leave the people behind that I work with. So
yeah, you don't need the one extra dollar. You're like, I've got something way more valuable here. Like, yeah, that's awesome. All right, well, that again, like, you heard it from Chad, you didn't hear it from me. Social media, I don't like, I have no skin in this game either. Like, I have no dog in this race. Like, I don't even manage social media accounts. We're a local SEO agency. I know that it gets so much flack that I need it. And you have obviously done so well with it that I was just like, I've got to hear what Chad has to say about this. And so anyway,
the way I look at social media is like, I was able to create something out of nothing, right? I was just an electrician, and I still am. I'm just an electrician, but I'm able to really enjoy the community, and it's beyond like going to my coworkers and be like, "What's up? You in the mood to work 100% or 90% today?" You know what I mean? It's like, it just brought the social media has brought the love of the trade, and I think ultimately that's going to change for our apprentices. The new guys coming in, we talked about the love of the trade a little bit ago. These guys start finding characters on social media that becomes their entertainment. You know, there's entertaining guys out there that do some crazy stuff, and they're kind of comedy. I'm trying to think of another podcast I did. A Modern Electrician does a podcast. And he's a funny guy. He was a comedian for a while, and those are the type of things that now the electrical industry, it's kind of cool because now you're part of something. You know what I mean? And I think that whether you're trying to get business as far as more customers, more workers, I've been in group chats with guys, and they're talking about business strategy with a bunch of business owners that own their own businesses. And they're like, hey, do service calls on Fridays, because then you live off that, and then you pay your guys off the account, and then whatever you get done on Friday service wise, that's your cash flow for yourself. And so they're talking about how to make money for themselves and how to manage. And so social media isn't just about marketing. I think you can really line yourself up with, if I ever got hard up for work, I could call my buddy D up in Humboldt, California, and go up there and help him wire something. Or I could fly over to Mississippi and help La Valley Electric, or I can go up to New York and help my buddy Eric up there. So social media does really change the job opportunity for everybody.
Oh, that's incredible. I think that's incredible both for business owners to know, and also for, again, like we've been talking a lot about, like, what does it look like to become an electrician right now and to continue on. And I don't think this is special to electricians, right? Like, if you're becoming a roofer, if you're becoming a plumber right now, if you're entering home services or the skilled trades, like, this stuff is true for you. Oh
yeah.
And so it's not true just for electrical companies. It's true for these industries, right? The blue collar industries. Like, this is how this is shifting, and we can be part of the community, part of the conversation. Obviously, or we don't have to be, but clearly we miss out on hanging out with people like Chad. So obviously we should be. But it's extra funny to me, this whole thing, because getting to talk to you has been so fun. I totally ditched Facebook over a year ago. And I was just like, I'm so sick of this. Just me personally, right? It wasn't even like raising a flag against the concept of social media or anything like that.
Right.
I just was like, I'm tired of what this thing is. And I sort of migrated over to LinkedIn and I wanted to spend more time with people who were sort of pushing and growing in that space. We're doing our own businesses. We're talking business talk. Like, I'm just interested. And I started to realize that I was missing anything from the like trades and stuff. And I had gotten used to that on Facebook, where I was seeing guys posting about before and afters and bathroom remodels. And I told you this about me. Like, I was bricklayer for 5 years. Like, bricklayers union, sorry, actual bricklayers. I worked with concrete terrazzo. Like, I worked on floors. But I saw a lot of that stuff. And so my assistant, Caitlin, who really should be my boss, not my assistant, she's 1,000 times smarter than I am. I just got lucky one day. She had some free time and I was like, will you work for me? And she said, yeah. And so that I just lucked out. But she was like, you've got to get back on Instagram. Like, the stuff that you're missing, the people that you're missing are over here.
Right.
And I was like, oh, all right, I'll give it a shot. And then, like, so obviously, like, oh, the community is right. Like,
yeah,
almost biffed it. But so I'm having so much more fun now connecting with people like you and being back on Instagram and seeing those kind of like the memes. And I don't know, it's fun to see people talk shit back and forth, especially when, you know, it's like, it's just a good time and whatever. Yeah. So anyway,
and one thing with social media is all the platforms are a little bit different. You know, I was like yourself, where I actually kind of got off of Facebook for a long time, and it was just all I was doing was Instagram. But one of the guys at Southwire, I think he's the director of marketing. He was like, Chad, you need a LinkedIn. And he's like, this is how you do it. I'm trying to figure out, how do I see other people's posts on LinkedIn? You know, other than scroll through the thing. I'm not that savvy at LinkedIn. But then I started a Facebook page, and it's completely different. You know, the trades guys on Facebook, they're a little bit more, they're different on Facebook than on Instagram. Instagram is a little bit more of a community. Anyway, they're both fine.
Yeah.
On Facebook comments on my post, which is fine. She has no idea about electrical if I post anything about that. They're just like, good job, Chad. And I'm like, okay, thank you. That doesn't happen on Instagram as often, but it's good to have that support. So I think social media is a must, and I think that it's we're learning about tools and about different ways. I showed my son a trick that I learned off of Instagram from a second-year apprentice on knocking one of the knockouts out of a box. I was like, hey, let me show you something, and it worked, and his eyes got big. And he's my son's technically a first year because of his apprenticeship card in school. So he's going to be able to take that. I learned it after decades. He's learning it right off the beginning, and it's because of social media. So I think
that's awesome. Well, we're going to wrap up. This has been a fantastic conversation. I have definitely been challenged a lot on some of the stuff, more than I want to admit. I have taken a few challenges. I
got to give you more credit. I think that your assistant's there because like-minded people kind of attract each other. I think you're a good guy, and you're obviously very smart and hard-working guy. So give yourself a pat on the back on that one.
I will take your pat on the back and appreciate it. I will take the compliment and say thank you. If you guys want to know more about Chad, anybody listening, then that's Chad German Electrical Consulting is his business. And you can find him on Instagram at Utah Electrician. I don't know if it matters. I'm showcasing my ignorance at Utah_electrician, chadgerman.com. And as the co-founder also, and help me with this one, co-founder of Nationwide Electrical Training. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay, at electricaledu.org. Did I get it?
You got it. That was perfect.
Sweet. Okay. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. This has been Nathan Young and the Home Service Leaders Podcast. That's it. It's a wrap. We're out. We'll catch you next time.